Accountability and Fairness. A research topic named School Accountability and Fairness, does progress rate encourage schools to work more equitably? It is written by Simon Burgess and Dave Thompson in London, Nuffield Foundation, 2020. The research topic focuses on the problem that 5 ACM indicator encouraged schools to focus on particular set of pupils, specifically those on the C and D borderline of grade. Second is that the published statistics on secondary schools attainment did not account for differences in school. Thus, the method used in research was analytical approach. When we say analytical approach, it is a method based on breaking down a complex process into its parts so as to better understand the whole. Therefore, the researchers used the 6 years of pupil level data covering all state-funded schools in England. Moreover, the researchers tracked and observed the changes in pupil attainment. The researchers also used difference in difference approach or D in D approach. D in D approach is a quasi-experimental approach where it compares the changes in outcome over time between a population enrolled in a program and a population that is not. Lastly, the researchers used flexible approach to model what controls a wide range of pupil characteristics. For the theory, we have here John Rawls' theory, which is the theory of justice and fairness. The theory made by John Rawls, an American political philosopher, describes society of free citizens holding equal basic rights and cooperating within an egalitarian economic system. For the findings of the research, we have here the first finding, which is results are consistent with the view that some schools had reacted to the previous regime of high implicit incentives for the exam results of students at the GCSE grade, C or D borderline. Second finding is that the borderline group appeared to make less relative progress compared to the other groups. So how can we apply accountability and fairness in teaching? Well, accountability and fairness in school are very important factors that we should consider. Accountability is being responsible. It is an assurance that an individual or an organization will be evaluated on the performance which they are responsible for. Fairness is the quality of treating people equally or in a way that is right or reasonable. In teaching, we should apply being accountable and fair, especially to our students. As teachers, we are responsible for the learnings of our students, and we should apply being fair to our students regardless of the status they are in. If we emphasize being fair in class or even outside school premises, then the students would also follow and do the same, for they see teachers as their role models. So we have here some examples of accountability and fairness. So first is that the public and its leaders in education have increasingly expected teachers and students to be accountable for their work. This means that the school and teachers are held responsible for implementing particular curricula and goals, and also that the students are held responsible for the learnings of that particular knowledge. Second is that getting to the water fountain first and quickly taking your drink so others can use it. So this is an example of being fair in school, in which we are we are able to give others the equal share that they deserve. Being fair-minded helps us develop mutually supportive relationships with the people around us.
Next is standard-based education. So standard-based education aims to provide the foundation of 21st century learning, an opportunity that prepares students for today, tomorrow, and the future. The study that I've chosen based on standard-based education is assessment of standard-based learning outcomes in science education based on German's perspective. And the problem of the study, the Standing Conference of German Minister released National Educational Standards or NES to define expectations for regular learning outcomes at secondary school for the three subjects of science, biology, chemistry, and physics. So the German perspective focuses on the science field, the biology, chemistry, and physics applied with the standard-based education and what's its effect towards the study. The National Educational Standards or the NES of German in science explicitly focused on the development of students' competencies with respect to the four areas of competency: use of content knowledge, achieving cognition, scientific communication, and evaluation and judgment. The methodology of this study: currently data collection for nationwide validation of the model referring to the areas of competencies of content knowledge and achieving cognition has been completed. Main objective of the study is to ensure the validity and reliability of test items and to choose high-quality test items through subsequent benchmarking since 2011. Another goal is to evaluate the inner structured assessment and compare this to the theoretical expectations of the competencies model. All of the researcher of this study developed for each of the three subjects for each teaching based on science field, biology, chemistry, and physics, and intend to initiate profound changes for teaching and assessment of their respective science school and schools. Theory. Clean Athlete near 2006, page 876, propose a working definitions of competencies as context-specific cognitive dispositions that are required by learning and are needed to successfully cope with certain situations, problems, or tasks in specific domains. The discussion on educational standards for science began much earlier in many other countries than it did in Germany. For the findings of the study, the validation study revealed that the whole range of persons' ability could be covered where satisfying test items of acceptable fit and discrimination. The selection of items for further use was based on their quality parameters. Items with at least one of the test quality parameters, difficulty, fit, or discrimination outside the acceptable range were labeled as critical. The German education system was oriented and policymakers had control of curricula, teacher education, school findings, but the outcomes of learning process for the monitoring of the education system has been neglected. The application of the study. Goal in the validation study was to evaluate the inner structure of the assessment and to compare it to the theoretical expectations outlined in the competence model. This especially concerns with hierarchical gradations of items, difficulty with respect to complexity, and cognitive processes. The results have to count the preliminary. Additional sources of variance lead to partly overlapping the levels. The results replicate trends of former findings and show that the underlying competence model can serve as an adequate basis of hierarchical addressing of competence requirements, not only with respect to content knowledge but within the area of competence, achieving cognition. Situation in real life. Coming from an input-oriented to an output-oriented view of teaching and learning practices leads to profound changes of evaluation and assessment strategy. Assessment wants to become central element to promote students' learning in Germany. It can provide a framework in which educational objectives are set and students' progress is expressed. From this point of view, it can provide a basic of forthcoming education steps to be planned. Each of the researchers develop a competence model that they use as their theory, the competence model. It is used to describe the levels of competence based on formulated expectations on the science field. Second, researchers and educators collaboratively develop test items according to the competence model for the task development of national assessments, such as standard-based education.
Good day. Let's proceed the outcome based on education. Do you have any idea of this? Alright. So the problems of the outcome based on educations is this trends started changing during current century with a utilize of technology and science for the manufacturing of latest equipment and more advanced ways of productions in Britain and later adopted by the other country as well. Nation growth and prosperity now depends on education, competency, knowledge, and efficiency of in the citizen. So presently, this century can also be known as an age of capital. In a relationship with a fact that main determined factor of nation criteria of standard living with a effectively with a utilize the skills, practical knowledge and competency, education opens different revenues to register economic expansions all around the world, with specific reference with developing nations and global statistics show that education and economic growth are directly related to each other in a positive direction and have constancy to each other. In the early 19th century, investments in human resources have a least important in any nation's expenditures on education, continuing and professional development and related other type of investment will trivial. So let's proceed. Methodology. Methodology to databases were search including Cochrane and Midline. A true search was performed to retrieve articles missed through databases as well as unpublished literature. Search strategy was designed by the combining Boolean and operators and K-terms related to review objectives. Research terms utilized for outcome-based education were competency-based education, active learning, approach, outcome-based assessment. So, theories. Outcome-based educations is education in which an emphasis is placed on a clearly articulated idea of what students are expected to know and be able to do. That is what skill and knowledge they need to have when they leave the school system. It's an education theory that bases each of part of an educational systems around goals. By the end of the educational experience, each student should have achieved the goal. There is no single specified style of teaching or assessment in OB. Instead, classes, opportunity, and assessment should should be all students achieve the specified outcomes. The role of the faculty adapts to instructors, trainer, and facilitators or mentor based on the outcomes targets. Alright. Findings. One of the significant findings of the literature is the identification of factors, especially the issues of English language competency in countries like Pakistan, where language proved to be a major barrier. Some of the major significance of the current study is that it can be helpful for educational authorities, teachers, consumers, parents, as well as the community. On a larger scale, it can be useful for education's policy developers, curriculum designers, and education departments. Education can identify which directions they have to choose towards recognizing for improvement. This may serve as a guiding tool for educations towards implementations of OB. So, before before I have a look at difference between the OB versus traditionals, to compare them, we have the three criteria. The first is the will be a curriculum. Second is be to teaching process, and the lastly is the assessment. They have the two curriculum according to the needs of today's student. The traditional is the same curriculum is passed on the from generations to generations. Proceed to application of teaching. This digest will focus on outcome-based education and along which art classroom. True outcome-based education must involve administrators, education, parents, and students. Ultimately, in the classroom, teacher who indicate of the success of the program. The most basic premise of outcome-based education states that all students are capable of learning and can be achieve high levels of competency when teacher delayed their expectation. When this is done, students will feel are participants in classroom decision and tend to be more supportive of all aspects of their class. Thus, the main objectives of OB is meet as student of staff both and the responsibility for successful learning outcomes. Sample of the real-life situation. Outcome-based education is a model of education that rejects the traditional focus on what the school provides to students in favor of making students demonstrate that they know they are able to do whatever they require. Outcomes are OB reforms emphasize setting clear standards for observable, measurable outcomes. Any teachers involved with the OB must be able to evaluate the effectiveness of his or her classroom experience eliminating OB. The following list delineates some of tenets of OB, and this digest will demonstrate how some of these tenets are utilized in the language arts or reading classroom.
Item response theory. So what is item response theory? In psychometrics, it is also known as latent trait theory, a very strong true score theory or modern mental test theory is a paradigm and for the design, analysis, and scoring of tests, questionnaires, and similar instruments, such as measuring abilities, attitudes, or other variables. It is a theory of testing based on the relationship between individuals and performance on a test item and the test taker's level of performance of an overall measure of the ability that item was designed to measure. Several different statistical models are used to represent both item and test taker characteristics, unlike simpler alternative. For creating scales and evaluating questionnaire responses, it does not assume that each item is equally difficult. This distinguishes herd from, or for an instance, the assumption in Likert scale is settled. Items are assumed to be replications of each other, or other words, items are considered to be parallel instruments by P197 contrast. The problem is some disadvantages of item response theory are strict assumptions, large sample size or with minimum of 200, 1,000 for complex models, which is more difficult to use than CTT. Computer programs not readily available and models are complex and difficult to understand. Next, methodology. Methodology for item response theory has become a popular methodological framework for modeling response data from assessments in education and health. However, its use is not widespread among psychologists. IRT or item response theory analysis revealed that the positive effect scale has items with moderate discrimination and are measuring respondents below the average score more effectively. The negative effect scale also present items with moderate discrimination and are evaluating respondents across the trait continuum, however with much less precision. And for the findings of item response theory, it is also known as the latent response theory, refers to a family of mathematical models that attempt to explain the relationship between latent traits or unobservable characteristic or attribute and their manifestations or the observed outcomes, responses, or performance. So that is the reason why the item response theory discovered. Applications of item response theory to clinical assessment are reviewed to appraise its current and potential value. Benefits of IRT or item response theory include comprehensive analysis and reduction of measurement error, creation of computer adaptive tests, meaningful scaling of latent variables, objective calibration and equating. Evaluation of test and item bias, greater accuracy in the assessment of change due to therapeutic intervention, and evaluation of model and person fit. The theory may soon reinvent the manner in which the tests are selected, developed, and scored. Although challenges remain the widespread implementation of item response theory, its application to clinical assessment holds great promise. So that would be all.